judge me.
They say witches can't feel human emotion. What do you believe in?
Okay, I think we are live right now. I want to confirm that.
Greater. Middling. It's all the same.
Princess Cirilla is your destiny.
I can't protect her.
If you dismiss it,
Geralt!
you will unleash true calamity upon us all.
I'll take that chance.
Okay, let's see if we can get rid of the... I want to get the image back, but... Alright, sorry about that. Just technical difficulties. I was not thinking that the media source would mess up our sound. Okay, I'm Linus Wilson. We're going to talk about the House of the Dragon and The Witcher Netflix. We're going to add all the different stuff back in here. So the plan for today is to talk about The Witcher Netflix and the Game of Thrones prequel, The House of the Dragon. So we've had just a flood of news from these two things. And I'm going to, once I get the technical difficulties sorted out, there we go. All right. I was hoping to run the two trailers in the background, but we'll pass on that. So we did have the new trailer from The Witcher Netflix. So there's been a flood of news, and it's been, I think it's interrelated. I think on the Netflix side, the flood of news is just basically because they had this end of Q4 deadline. They're gonna launch it, release all 8 episodes by December 20th. And so you'll be able to binge watch that before Christmas. So we've the kind of media blackout that they've lifted that to promote the show, which makes a lot of sense for The Witcher's point of view. HBO is kind of freaking out right now, and they canceled the Blood Moon prequel about the Age of Heroes, and then they greenlit, without a pilot, a 10-episode season for the House of the Dragon. Now, my take on this is in part a response to the fear that people are going to dump HBO for Disney Plus or Netflix, which is kind of a reasonable thing to do if you're a big Game of Thrones fan and there's nothing on HBO to keep you there. I haven't watched a series since their miniseries Chernobyl, which was excellent, but they really dropped the ball in a lot of ways. I mean, of course, HBO, the criticism of them is that season 7 and 8 were awful, and that wasn't entirely their fault. They should have made sure that Dan and Dave had a bigger writer's room than they did. They should have took more oversight over the scripts. And, when the problems in season 7 were obvious that they were doing the jetpacking and all the other nonsense in season 7, that they should have insisted on this and not given Dan and Dave, who checked out and signed with Star Wars, which they just recently dumped, all that latitude. But really the bigger thing, I think, is and you look back at kind of entertainment history and the dropping the ball of a major franchise and the opportunity for HBO to make and keep an audience, was at the end of season 7, they definitely should have had pilots for prequels. That they should have started filming prequels between season 7 and 8. So while Game of Thrones was filming season 8, they should have been filming a prequel series, right? And why they didn't do that, why they did not start greenlighting prequels until after Game of Thrones finished in season 8, no one knows except total corporate ineptitude. That any other network would have said, hey, we don't want to lose subscribers. We don't want to wait 3 years for the prequels to this show. We want to be able to roll them out and keep people on the platform. Don't make them wait 4 years. And by not greenlighting pilots or scripts or anything before the end of season 8, they essentially did that. And they gave the initiative to networks like Amazon Prime, which is looking to roll out The Lord of the Rings and The Wheel of Time. And at least they've written the scripts. And Netflix, who has been totally on top of this. So when Netflix was greenlighting The Witcher, HBO should have been greenlighting House of Dragon, right? Now, if you look at the timeline, it wasn't until November 2018 that Fire and Blood, the history of the Targaryens, came out. But we also had the World of Ice and Fire history, which covers a lot of the same ground as Fire and Blood, Part 1. So it wasn't like they couldn't have done a House of the Dragon. The whole of the Westeros Seven Kingdoms history was laid out for them by 2014, right? And it was obvious by season 7 that, people were going to eat up whatever Game of Thrones threw out. And the fact that they just dithered and didn't do anything, and they gave the initiative to another franchise, The Witcher, is going to be seen as, one of the great disasters in entertainment history. So I want to talk about some of the Witcher news coming out. We've had a lot of interviews. One of the most interesting, I thought, was reported on by Redanian Intelligence. Andrzej Sapkowski, the author of all 8 Witcher books. And the Witcher books are the basis for the TV series. They're based on the first 2 short story books. Andrzej Sapkowski gave an interview to some Italian magazine, Corriere la Lettura, and they translated his interview. Andrzej Sapkowski, the Polish author, speaks 20 languages. This guy is brilliant, and his writing is just really popular writing. It's very easy to read, exciting writing, and of course his saga is done. The Witcher story is complete. So there's no George R.R. Martin problems. So Sapkowski was commenting on George R.R. Martin. I've read all the Martin books about the Song of Ice and Fire and the history books, and I've read all the Sapkowski books. And Sapkowski's a much easier, much more entertaining read, let me tell you. But anyways, but George is going to keep you occupied for a long time, much deeper, much more intricate, the writing of George R.R. Martin. Okay, although I find the histories a bit dry. But they're better than the Silmarillion, which the Lord of the Rings series is adapting. And don't get me started on that. Okay, so Sapkowski's... this is from Redanian Intelligence. Sapkowski says he is certain The Witcher will succeed in replicating the success of the highly acclaimed HBO series, if not even surpass it. I appreciate the work of George R.R. Martin. I like his series, but found his books have too many protagonists. Once I asked him, but why do you kill all those characters? Because I like it, George R.R. Martin replied. And Sapkowski says, I don't think the readers feel the same way. So Sapkowski is famous for talking some trash. He's talked some trash about the video games, why a lot of video gamers, who are the majority of the Witcher fans, have a dim opinion of Sapkowski. I thought it was funny he was talking trash about George R.R. Martin and also saying that his series is gonna surpass that. We shall see. He's not done it in the bestseller list yet, and certainly hasn't done it on TV. But we will see what we get. The other interesting thing is that after the Lucca Comic Con and October 31st, when they released the trailer, which we covered and dissected on this channel, the showrunner, Lauren S. Hissrich, has done a lot of interviews. And, one of the interviews she did, she said that she has mapped out 7 seasons of The Witcher, right? So they got season 1's going to premiere on December 20th, 2019. All 8 episodes at once, Netflix style, which happens to be also Star Wars Episode 9's release date. So Netflix is putting the knife into Disney and Lucasfilm, for whom Netflix stole Dan and Dave from. We'll get back to that. So Dan and Dave also said recently when they originally mapped out 7 seasons for HBO's Game of Thrones when they were starting out as showrunners. But it's obvious that, or there's no official word that Netflix has approved even a season 2, although Redanian Intelligence did uncover that a lot of the writers have been putting on their, I think it's Writers Guild profiles, the names of the episodes that they wrote. So we have the names, according to Redanian Intelligence, we have the names of the episodes 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. Maybe there was one I didn't write down. Sorry about that. But I think there was 6. And I'll give you those. And I'll also tell you the short stories that I think are the principal short stories, which they're based on my research. But episode 4, so supposedly these writers. The other thing about the writers was they said that some of them said that they were writing in last year, but some of them say they're writing in 2020 and 2021, like they still have jobs after the season goes forward. Redanian Intelligence is saying that that's proof that this series has been green-lighted for season 2, or good evidence of that. I don't believe that. I think the networks think of the writers' room as kind of like an option to film a series. So they get you have to get the writers' room going, get some scripts before you can film a series. So you might as well get those scripts, read those scripts, and then give the green light. That's what I think is going on. That it's not been greenlit. There's no evidence that they filmed any part of season 2. So I don't think they've approved it yet. I think they will approve it. I think The Witcher's going to do great. A few days ago, there were 8 million views of the trailer, the second trailer. The official tease from July from San Diego Comic-Con had over 20 million views and was the 5th most viewed video on Netflix. If you look at just the most recent trailer that came out on October 31st, it had way more views than any video or trailer they'd released on Netflix. So I think it's going to do very well. And I think Netflix is going to see a lot of subscriptions, including mine, because of The Witcher. Okay, so here are the episodes that Redanian Intelligence, they said episode 2 was called 4 Marks. I've done a plot spoiler for that, and I say that it's going to be based on the Edge of the World, which is about the Sylvan and also an interaction with the elves. So the first teaser was really heavy on the conflict with the elves, and I think they're going to use that, introduce that in episode 2. Obviously, episode 1 is going to be the lesser evil, the Butcher of Blaviken story. There's like no doubt about that whatsoever. Princess Renfrey was in the trailer, and the trailers have been all over that, and that was the pilot. Episode 3 is Betrayer Moon. We have that to be the Witcher story. That is the Striga story. Got a plot spoiler for that. That was the first short story that Andrzej Sapkowski wrote. And then episode 4, it's going to be Of Banquets, Bastards, and Burials. And I think the principal short story that it's going to be based on is The Question of Price. And then Redanian Intelligence is reporting that episode 6, these writers said they wrote Rare Species, and that obviously is The Edge of Reason, which is about the Golden Dragon. So the big thing in the trailer that I think was not there was the dragon. Where's the dragons? Netflix, you guys hired Dan and Dave for $250 million. Where's our dragons? We want to see the dragons. You got a dragon in episode 6. Where's the dragon? So I think that's what they're working on right now. They have not done the VFX yet. The best we got was like a ghoul or something in there. It was the VFX I thought was lacking. Where is it? So I think we're going to get another trailer before the season starts, because one with the VFX in it, because the VFX is not there yet. And obviously they don't want to have a dragon that looks like the Polish Witcher series dragon. And they also had clips for sure from the Bounds of Reason. Sorry, not the Edge of Reason, but the Bounds of Reason short story that's the Golden Dragon story. Episode 8 is called Much More. That obviously is going to be the principal short story that's based on is Something More. So you need destiny, but something more, and that's kind of the end of the Sword of Destiny. And we're also going to have the Battle of Sintra there too. But it's gonna bring Ciri and my guess is that Ciri and Geralt will be reunited in that last episode, or they'll leave that for a cliffhanger in season 2. So that's kind of the news, and Hissrich gave the interview about the 7 seasons planned in the SFX magazine, but I still don't think, just because she's writing about that, she's planning it out, that I still don't think that means that multiple seasons have been greenlit by Netflix, right? It's one thing to pay the writers to do some planning. It's another thing to pay actors, directors, production people, and I don't think that's been done yet. I think they're still waiting to see. I would give it like less than 10%, maybe less than 5% chance that there won't be a season 2, just from the reaction. But maybe it's gonna premiere badly and it's just gonna flop. I don't think that's the case. Okay, so let's go to the HBO news, the House of the Dragon. So I think you have to think of this. There's a lot of different contexts here. I think HBO is freaking out about Disney Plus. And I think they also kind of are freaking out about The Witcher, which they shouldn't be, because it's been in the works for a long time. We knew it was coming out in Q4 2019. And so that's why they make this official announcement to say that the House of the Dragon is approved. It sounds like Blood Moon, the pilot that they canceled at the same time that they announced the House of the Dragon, essentially, was a sleeper. I didn't think it was a great plot idea personally. There was very little source material for that, for one thing, and everybody's over the White Walkers. They killed the White Walkers in season 8, so maybe that's one good thing about them not greenlighting a prequel prior to season 8, was that they destroyed the White Walkers for everybody because Arya could kill them with one dagger thrust. Okay, so HBO gives series order to House of the Dragon. This is the official press release. Co-created by Ryan Condal and George R.R. Martin. Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik. That's the dude from all the great almost all the great battle episodes, including the Battle of the Bastard and Hard Home, and he also directed the big episodes in season 8. And I don't think you can blame Miguel Sapochnik for anything in season 8. I think except for they could have put a little more light in the Long Night. They could have just a little more light level in the Long Night. But the things that we really hate about season 8 was from the writing of Dan and Dave. And do I think that now that Dan and Dave are associated with Netflix, there's no official word that they are going to be involved with The Witcher? I think they will be in some ways. I don't know about the writer's room that they're going to have much influence, but I think my guess is that they would want to help have them involved in kind of the more production size. I think there's been an overreaction with Dan and Dave. Their comments at Austin. I've gone through them. I've listened to the thing. It's obvious that they were very inexperienced in season 1 of Game of Thrones, right? That's not a secret. That's not news. And they did a very good job. I would say that they did a very good job for the first 6 seasons. Maybe season 6 was falling off. They did an excellent job of adapting a group of novels that was so dense. I know George R.R. Martin had a big following before Game of Thrones, but they are very dense novels. very hard to adapt for TV. Somehow they were able to do that. So they did a good job adapting. I think that they could do a good job adapting for The Witcher. I don't think they need them to do that. I think they got a lot of great writers, including Lauren S. Hissrich as the showrunner. But where I think they may need work is the shoot locations, which supposedly they're changing up. They seem like they're behind on VFX, and obviously Dan and Dave especially in the later seasons, had a very VFX, special effects heavy production there. So I can't imagine they won't have some role in The Witcher Season 2. But my hope is that they will not be the principal ones in the writer's room. And obviously their mistake in the end of Game of Thrones was that they were taking on too much responsibility of the writing, and they needed to bring more people in. And I don't think that's a problem with Lauren S. Hissrich from what I've seen. I've actually seen pictures of their writer's room. I'm pretty confident that they have a competent group of writers there. We will see when the season progresses. Obviously, I don't think this is a lot of news, but The Witcher it is going to emphasize Ciri and Yennefer's character and create backstory for them, and that's come out in all her subsequent interviews and her prior interviews to Luca, that her prior to October 31st interviews, that they're going to emphasize the stories of those women, so that those characters are going to be more to the forefront than they are in the first two short story collections. I think that's a good idea. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the CD Projekt Red video games, what was their most successful video game? It was the video game that featured Yennefer and Ciri, right? So I don't think that there should be any surprise that those are, the second and third strongest characters after Geralt of Rivia. So emphasizing those, building up those characters, making them integral to the plot, and tying the short stories into the saga more closely, I think those are all good ideas. Okay, so I'll go back to the HBO PR release. It says Miguel Sapkowski will direct pilot and additional episodes. Ryan Condal, George R.R. Martin, Miguel Sapkowski, and Vince Geraghty executive produce. HBO has given a 10-episode straight-to-series order for The House of the Dragon, a Game of Thrones prequel created by George R.R. Martin and Ryan Condal. Miguel Sapkowski and Ryan Condal will partner as showrunners and will also serve as executive producers along with George R.R. Martin and Vince Geraghty. It was announced at Warner Media Day by Casey Bloys, president of HBO programming, right? I don't know if he was a president back when they came out with season 7, but he dropped the ball that he didn't greenlight this like 3 years ago. If he wasn't there, whoever was there before should have greenlighted House of the Dragon a long time ago. Okay. Tells the story of House Targaryen. Miguel Sapkowski will direct the pilot with additional episodes. Condal and Sapkowski will partner as showrunners on the series, which will be written by Condal. The Game of Thrones universe is so rich with stories, says Casey Bloys, president of HBO programming. We look forward to exploring the origins of House Targaryen and the early days of Westeros, along with Miguel, Ryan, and George. House of the Dragon marks Sapkowski's first project as part of the HBO overall deal, where he will develop and produce content for both HBO and HBO Max. HBO Miguel Sapkowski won an Emmy for Outstanding Director for a Drama Series, as well as the DGA Award for the Game of Thrones episodes. They have so many awards. Even this year, when the writing was awful, Season 8 won so many awards. It's ridiculous. For directing Game of Thrones episode The Long Night, and won the Emmy for Best Drama Series as an executive producer for the final season. In total, Sapkowski has directed 6 episodes of Game of Thrones, including Hard Home, The Winds of Winter. In addition to the episodes previously noted, he also directed the film Bios for Amblin Studios starring Tom Hanks, which debuts in the fall of 2020. Previously, Sapkowski directed the episodes of True Detective for HBO and Banshee for Cinemax. Not a bad CV. Ryan Condal was the co-creator and showrunner for Colony for 3 seasons. He's the writer of MGM's Hercules and currently adapting the graphic novel Analog as a feature for Lionsgate. Okay, so that's the PR release from HBO. I also wanted to read from George R. R. Martin's Not a Blog. All right, and here his take. He has some kind of interesting comments, I think. Okay, so his Not a Blog, October 30th, Dragons Take Wing. Last night in Hollywood at Warner Media Day, HBO made it official. We had a green light for Game of Thrones' successor show. Not just a pilot, but a full season order for 10 episodes. House of the Dragon is the title of the show, and needless to say, it will be centered on the House Targaryen, set a couple of centuries before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire, and based on the Archmaesters Gildan's imaginary history, Fire and Blood. I read it. It's okay. It's better than the Silmarillion. Okay, so the new series will be helmed by a couple of great showrunners, Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapkowski. Miguel's name will be well known to every HBO fan. I'll skip to Ryan Condal. Ryan Condal is new to Westeros, but not to me. I first met Ryan when he came to New Mexico to shoot a pilot for a fantasy western that was not picked up. I visited his set and we became friendly. Later, Ryan created and served as showrunner for the SF series Colony, and we had the honor of doing a premiere screening for the show at Jean Cocteau. He's a terrific writer and a fan of my books as well. Well before we met, he tells me that he discovered the series just after A Storm of Swords was published, and I've loved the books for 19 years. Yeah, well, why didn't he get this pilot greenlit in 2017? He's a huge fan of my Dunk and Egg stories. In fact, that was the show he wanted to do initially, but I'm not prepared to bring Dunk and Egg to television until I've written quite a few more stories like that's ever going to happen. Working with Ryan on development of the House Dragon has been a dream. The Dunk and Egg stories I actually liked. The news is all over the internet by now, of course. So I won't rehash the basics here, but you can find good informed accounts on the websites. Check here. House of Dragon has been in development for several years, though the title has changed a couple of times during the process. It was actually the first concept I pitched to HBO when we started talking about a successor show way back in the summer of 2016. See, just more confirmation of HBO management's incompetence. If you'd like to know more of what the show will be about, well, I can't exactly spill those beans, but he just said it was 2 centuries before the Game of Thrones. I think that you can actually pinpoint that pretty well. But you might want to put a copy of the 2 anthologies I did with Gardner Dovel's Dangerous Women and Rogues, and then move to Archmaesters Gildan's History, Fire and Blood. Well, there you go. I've not read Dangerous Women and Rogues, so gonna have to put that on the reading list. Let's see. He says there's a writer room that's been assembled. Episodes. Oh, there's a writer's room to be assembled. So they don't have a writer's room. Okay. Episodes will be broken down, and they don't know where they're going to be shooting. So basically, this was approved in a panic by an executive that was freaking out about Netflix and Disney Plus. HBO also announced that it decided not to proceed with the other successor show we had in development, the one I kept calling The Long Night, although everybody else was calling it Blood Moon. The pilot for which was shot in Northern Ireland last summer. So I think there's an interesting story there. There's been some reports that The Long Night was kicked out of Northern Ireland. Who's using it now? Who's using those studios now? I think some good reporting could be done on that. Yeah, it was written by Jane Goldman, starring Naomi Watts. Splendid cast. It was rumored, this is me talking, it was rumored to be a Downton Abbey in Westeros. A prehistoric Downton Abbey in Westeros. Okay, so and then George goes on to say that he was that we could have millions of shows on the world of Westeros, and we really should. Okay. He's also let me read this part. This is very important to book readers. But let me make this perfectly clear. I am not taking on any scripts until I've finished and delivered Winds of Winter. Winter is still coming, and the Winds remain my priority as much as I'd love to write an episode of House of the Dragon, not the Doctor show. Okay, so and I think too much has been made out of that statement. George has made a lot of deadlines in the past. He doesn't make any deadlines. He's made promises. He's made the Winds of Winter would be the 6th book out of 7 in the planned Song of Ice and Fire series, which was finished on Game of Thrones in spectacularly awful fashion. His books are much more complicated than Game of Thrones was right before they diverged, where Dan and Dave were working off his outline, which he's probably abandoned long since. I'm one of those thinking that we may never get Winds of Winter. I'm giving it less than 50-50 we're going to get Winds of Winter. And A Dream of Spring, I'm putting that below 20%. I think George is just enjoying his life as a celebrity too much to write 2,000-page books right now. And, yeah, okay. My hope is that the George R.R. Martin estate will hire somebody to finish the series, but he's not going to do that while he's alive. Okay, so and it's actually interesting. The Wheel of Time, which is an Amazon series that is coming up, that was finished by not its original author, and that might be the model for the Song of Ice and Fire, but it's not a model. It's going to happen anytime soon. So we shall see. Amazon seems like it's taking its sweet time. But they do have scripts written. I think they're reading scripts for Winds of Winter and The Lord of the Rings. So I think the best you can hope for is that The House of the Dragon comes out in 2021, which will probably have The Witcher Season 2 before then. And we'll probably also have Lord of the Rings too, right? So I think there's a good chance that The Witcher could come out with season 2 before any of these shows come out. But we shall see. All right, I'm Linus Wilson. Subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss another one of my videos. I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning of this live stream, but I'm going to say goodbye.